Don't rewind this. Whatever you do, don't rewind it. That's how it started last time. When she came back through the screen, she smiled like she remembered you. Only you've never met, right? The footage doesn't lie, it waits. And when you go back, it knows. If you're hearing this, it already knows you're here. So ask yourself, do you remember pressing play, or did it press you? If you found this, don't send it to the cops. Don't show it to your priest. And for the love of anything, still human in you, don't listen past the breathing. I didn't believe in monsters when I took the case, just people. Messy, cruel, bleeding people. Monsters wear badges, wedding rings, Sunday smiles. They don't need claws, or so I thought. 6 weeks ago, I was assigned to the Elkhorn Ridge incident. Missing persons, cold woods, paper trail. Thinner than a lie told twice. It started with a father and his son, campers. They never came back. Then 2 hunters, seasoned, smart, armed, gone. Then a group of amateur documentarians chasing fairy tales. They said they were making something called Teeth in the Fog. Cute. They brought microphones, GoPros, ego, and jokes. They thought folklore was just unverified nostalgia, something to capture, brand, edit, monetize. They were wrong. The locals don't hike the ridge anymore. They cross themselves when the wind howls through the trees. They keep their dogs inside. They don't say names out loud after dusk, because the ridge, it echoes, it doesn't copy, it claims. They call it the Ridge of Red Howls. They say if you hear your name out there, you weren't the one who said it. I chalked it up to backwoods hysteria, whiskey-fueled legend building saw. Too much deliverance as kids. But then we found the van, parked half submerged in a shallow ravine, like it drove itself into hiding. Doors locked, no signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies. Inside, tapes, hours of footage, night vision, static, flickering battery icons, audio journals, panicked breathing, camera, flashes like gunshots in fog. But the worst thing, the window. The front passenger window had one sentence scratched into it, jagged and deep, like something tried to write its way out. The hunger doesn't end, it passes. That phrase haunts me, not just because of what it means, but because it wasn't scratched from the outside, it was clawed from the inside. I took the tapes home, should have bagged them, logged them, but something pulled at me, some buried need to know. I locked myself in my garage with the blinds down, and the door bolted. Laptop, headphones, scotch, hit play. Watch the story unravel one flicker at a time. It begins like all bad ideas do, a long drive, laughter in the back seat, someone making fun of the map, someone else filming it all like it matters. They're young, naive, confident enough to joke about monsters, but scared enough to keep checking the battery life. May, the host, sharp-tongued, sarcastic, probably ran a podcast or 3. Rico, her older brother, ex-military, quiet but watchful. June, their cam operator, barely spoke above a whisper. And Ty, the audio guy, skinny, jittery, always chasing anomalies. They pitched a tent at the forest edge, a place the locals won't name. Even when pressed, the moment their boots crossed the threshold, the audio changed, not louder, not distorted, different. There was breathing, not theirs, not human, low, rhythmic, like something pacing in the dark. I remember May laughing into the camera. If I don't get turned into a werewolf out here, I'm demanding a refund. It was funny, in that doomed, irony-dripping kind of way. They lit a campfire, told urban legends, dared each other to scream, and in the middle of the fun, Ty tilted his head like a dog catching scent. Yo, you hear that? Everyone went quiet. It was a long, breathless silence. Then they all shook their heads, laughed it off. But they'd all heard it. That's the thing about the ridge. You can lie to your friends, but not to the woods. Later that night, they found a clearing, burnt ash circles, half-buried bones, a metal post in the center, blackened and fused at the top. Rico said it looked like something had been restrained there. May called it a werewolf crucifix, they joked, but their eyes were wide. You stay on that trail too long, she said. You'll start hearing your own name out loud, not you saying, it, the woods. June flinched, whispered something about seeing a crouched figure behind a log. Ty begged her not to say that out loud, like the words themselves could summon something. Then the static started, a soft crackle on the mic. Not interference, not wind, whispers. The human brain sees faces in trees, voices in white noise, patterns in chaos. But the ridge doesn't show you patterns. It shows you, the parts you try to forget, the pieces you bury. It doesn't hunt, it invites, it asks. And someone always says yes. They called it a test shoot one night at the ridge's edge, just to feel the atmosphere, just to get a vibe. It wasn't the real filming, not yet. They laughed too much for real fear to set in. May kept cracking jokes about being eaten first, because she's the most sarcastic. Ty argued that cryptids prefer quiet, anxious meat, so he was clearly screwed. Rico rolled his eyes and sharpened a camping knife just loud enough for the mic to catch. And June. June kept glancing over her shoulder like she already knew the ending. They camped beneath a cluster of pine trees that leaned inward like eavesdropping, built a small fire, unrolled sleeping bags, set up gear. The ridge let them feel safe for a little. While long enough for the doubt to settle in, not burst through, the first hour of footage is just friends being friends, bantering. Roasting Ty for bringing 6 different mics and no toilet paper, roasting May for vlogging everything like it was a red carpet event. They set up cameras facing the tree line, GoPros on their backpacks, lapel mics with wind covers shaped like tiny werewolf heads. The whole thing was ridiculous, and then it wasn't. Sometime around 11:20 the laughter thinned. Not because anything had happened, but because of what hadn't. No bugs, no owls, no night sounds at all, just breathing. Faint, measured, like someone standing behind the mic with no heartbeat. Ty's head turned first, slow, instinctive, like something brushed against the edges of his thought. Yo, again, do you hear that? Everyone paused. Rico held his breath. May tilted her head and said nothing. June adjusted her lens. There was nothing there, and yet there was a soft scrape. Not from the woods, from the tape itself, like the audio was being scratched open while they spoke. It passed, or maybe it paused. Hard to tell. They laughed again, uneasy this time, to fill the silence, to fight the echo, to act. Like fear was still funny, then came the howl, not long, not close, but wrong. Like a wolf's cry folded inside a woman's breath, like something trying to sound like something else. It came from the east, but the trees warped the direction. It bounced from bark to bark until it felt like it came from inside the firelight. May froze. Rico stood. Ty whispered, "Not funny, not funny, not funny." June's camera shook, not from her hands, from the ground beneath her, but the fire didn't move. No wind, no quake, just something shifting. They debated packing up, leaving, but the ridge doesn't let you leave until it's ready. Instead, they decided to sleep in shifts. Ty offered first watch. He sat with headphones on, scanning for signal anomalies. That's when the loop began. I've played the footage dozens of times, always the same, always wrong. At 1:12 a.m., the camp is silent. At 1:13, Ty's head jerks sideways. He rips off his headset, looks toward the woods, then whispers, "That's not my name." He stands, moves toward the tree line, stops. Behind him, on the footage, there's a shape. Blink and you'll miss it. Pause and you'll wish you hadn't. Crouched, lurking just outside the firelight. Not quite human, but not bestial either. Too still, too symmetrical, like it was wearing skin not built from it. Ty doesn't see it, but the camera does. He turns back, mutters, "Never mind, nothing." Goes back to the fire, sits down. That's when the whisper plays through the mic. Clear, wrong, Tyler James Moore. "We missed you." He flinches, checks his recorder. Nothing playing, just static. The timestamp reads 1:16. The screen flickers. Then it's 1:12 again. Same frame, same pose, same whisper. A glitch, a loop, or a warning that the tape itself is remembering things. Ty doesn't mention it, but from that moment on, his voice is off, delayed, hollow, like he's already listening to something louder than the group. Next morning, May wakes up last. Rico is boiling water. June is reviewing footage. Ty is smiling. Too wide, too still. He hasn't blinked. Sleep good. May jokes, like the dead, he says, not blinking. Later that morning, they find the clearing, the one from the legend. Ash rings, bone piles, a charred stake in the center. Rico says, "Looks like something was tied up here." May jokes, "Great, A werewolf crucifix, super normal. Then she adds, "You stay on this trail too long, you'll start hearing your own name out loud." Not, "You saying it? The woods." June stops filming, stares at something behind a log. "I swear I just saw something." "It ducked down," Ty snaps. "Don't say that. Don't say that out loud." But the ridge heard it, and once it hears something, it repeats it. The ridge doesn't pounce, it waits. And when it takes something, it does it so quietly, you don't even feel the loss at first. Like losing a tooth in a dream, like waking up with blood on your pillow, but no wound you can find. It happened after breakfast. They were debating which trail to take. Ty wanted to loop around the ridge to test resonance fields. May wanted to hike straight into the dark and make something viral. June didn't say much. She just nodded, turned her camera toward the trees, zoomed in, clicked once, then said, "That's weird," and walked away. They didn't follow right away. Why would they? She was just stepping off the path to pee or scout a shot. They gave her 5 minutes, then 10. Then Rico asked, "Where's June?" Ty looked up. She just went to pee 5 minutes ago. May checked her phone. No signal, no location ping. They called her name once, twice, then stopped, because that's when the woods said it back, faint far. But it wasn't an echo. "June." It came from deep in the brush, but not like a shout, like a mimic. Like the trees had a tongue, they froze. Every one of them, Rico whispered, "Okay." That wasn't funny. No one laughed. They retraced her steps, saw the exact path she walked, pressed down. Moss, boot prints, and then nothing. Like the forest had stitched itself shut. Then Ty's recorder kicked on. No button pressed, no cue, just live. And it played back the last 30 seconds of camp audio. Only June's voice was missing. As if she'd never spoken, Ty started pacing, tugging at his collar, breathing too fast. "It's not a predator. Predators don't mock you," May called. Out again, louder this time. "June! June!" Silence, then a crunch. They turned. No figure, just her flashlight, still warm, still glowing, pointed directly into the trees. May stepped toward it, bent down, lifted the light in the lens, just for a frame. Something. Smiled back, barely human, too many teeth, no eyes, just skin stretched where features should be. Rico yanked her back. "Turn that mic off," he snapped. "Ow." Ty didn't move. He stared at the trees. "It's in the trees," he mumbled. "It's learning," they argued, shouted, fought over whether to stay or run, but May wasn't listening anymore. She was kneeling, shaking, muttering June's full name over and over like a prayer she forgot how to end. Then she said it, too loud, too clear. "Her name is June Park. If you're out there, just bring her back, please." And the ridge answered, not with her, not for her, but through her. May gasped. Eyes went wide. Then she vomited, black bile, onto the moss. Inside it, static, crackling like a TV turned on with no channel. Ty screamed, but not from his own mouth. From the earpiece, it played his own scream and loop, louder, more. Distorted with each pass, he dropped to his knees, started clawing at his neck like something was crawling out. "It's wearing me," he whispered. "It's wearing me." Then May screamed, not from fear, from rage. "We were just trying to find." The old story, just trying to tell the truth. And the ridge, it loves being watched. The camera panned to her face. She was crying, but her tears didn't fall. They floated, like the air was thicker near her skin, like she was submerged in something invisible. Rico pulled her up, dragged her away. "We have to go now." Ty didn't move, didn't even flinch. His eyes rolled back. He whispered something, over and over, not English, not Latin, but names, too many names. Jared, Ellie, Rosa, June, June. June! The trees leaned closer. You could hear the wood creaking like bone, like breath. They ran back to the trail. But the ridge doesn't do trails, it does circles. And behind them, Ty began to howl, not like a wolf, not like a man, something in between, something pretending, and buried beneath the howl was June's voice, crying, begging, repeating, "I'm still here, I'm still here, I'm still..." Then silence, total, the kind of silence you don't hear. You feel like pressure behind your teeth, like your ears about to pop. The ridge had taken one, marked the others, and now it wanted a witness. They ran, branches cracked against their arms, moss slipped beneath their boots, breath steamed in the cold air like prayers fleeing a dying body. But the trail didn't go anywhere. They ran left, then right, then back the way they came. And every time they turned, they passed the same tree, crooked, split bark, dark sap bleeding down like veins, and nailed to its trunk, June's hoodie, same one, blood-stained, still damp. Rico stopped first, eyes wide. He touched the sleeve, still warm. "We passed this," he whispered. Already, May checked the camera. The timestamp blinked. Then, roo. Again, resetting, the ridge had turned time into a hallway with no doors. Ty staggered. Behind them, mouth open, but no sound, just a flickering hum, like tape being eaten in reverse. Then he said it, clear, sharp, wrong. "We were never meant to leave." May grabbed him, shook him, but he didn't blink, didn't breathe like he needed to. He looked at her and said, "It's your guilt, May. That's what opened the loop." She slapped him hard. He didn't react, just smiled. Too wide, like he was proud of her. They walked for another 20 minutes, or maybe 2 hours. Time had collapsed in on itself. The sun hadn't moved. The air never warmed. The wind didn't shift. Just that same crooked tree, same hoodie, same smudge of blood on the bark. Ty started laughing, then sobbing, then both at once. "You know what's funny?" he said. "I used to dream in static as a kid, just lines and snow, and I'd wake up with my pillow soaked and my mouth full of dust. No one responded. What do you say to something like that?" May finally broke. "We're not in the forest anymore. We're in the tape." Rico stopped walking. "Say that again." "This isn't the ridge. This is the playback. It's already happened." The camera flickered, frame skipped, her mouth moved, but her voice lagged. Behind them, something moved. Not footsteps, edits, like the woods were being cut and rearranged around them. Then the trees shifted. They bent at angles that shouldn't exist, curved inwards, branches reaching down like arms, and at the center of the bent trunks, a clearing, an old ranger's outpost, collapsed walls, rotten roof, but one window still intact. Inside, a mirror, cracked, shimmering, alive. They stepped inside. Ty followed, humming a lullaby off-key, the same one he said his mother sang when the monsters got loud. But he'd never told anyone that, in the mirror, they saw themselves, almost. The reflections lagged. May lifted her arm. Her mirror self blinked 2 seconds later, then smiled. But May wasn't smiling. "That's not me," she whispered. Rico reached for her shoulder, but froze. Behind May's reflection stood a second version of her. Same face, same jacket. But the smile was wrong. Teeth too sharp, eyes too still. Then the mirror changed. The reflection warped. Cracks widened. And instead of their own images, they saw the campfire, that first night, looped, distorted, repeating. June laughing, Ty whispering, the howl. And over it all, a voice, not a scream, not a threat, a whisper like tape being whispered back into your brain. Memory doesn't fade here, it plays louder. The mirror pulsed red. A glyph appeared, like a claw turned inward, burning itself into the glass. Rico touched it. His hand burned, but he didn't pull away. "I think I remember this," he said. "I think I've dreamed this place." May was crying. "Why would it show us this?" Ty, still smiling, said, "Because we already agreed." May turned. Agreed to what? Ty didn't answer. He dropped to his knees, began etching something into the dirt. With a bone he hadn't been holding seconds ago, a spiral, a sigil, the same one from the mirror. Then he said June's name over and over, but each time it sounded less human, more like a recording, like he was remembering her voice and repeating it with the wrong mouth. Suddenly, light, the moon, now red, full, heavy, a blood moon, reflected perfectly in the cracked mirror. And standing in that reflection, not Ty, not May, not Rico, someone else, tall, furred, jagged, eyes like static, mouth wide with broken smiles, and the glyph on May's hand began to glow. It had chosen, and the loop was over. There's no warning, no roar, no leap from the shadows, just the reflection, still as glass, but shifting beneath the surface like something trapped behind ice. May stares at herself, except it's not herself anymore. The woman in the mirror stands. Taller, eyes deeper, mouth heavier. She looks like May, but only on the surface. Inside, something's awake, she whispers. I never said sorry. Rico turns. What? I never said sorry. I never tried to save her. Flash. The mirror pulses, sound warps, time collapses. We see it. What really happened? The night June vanished. May saw her walk off, heard something move in the dark, heard the scream. Soft, short, cut off, and did nothing. She froze, held her breath, told herself it was an animal, that June would come back. That being brave was staying still, but it wasn't. Being brave would have been running toward the scream. She didn't. She waited. She chose to wait, and the ridge never forgot. The mirror ripples, not like water, like muscle behind the glass. May's reflection shifts. Her eyes glow red, her mouth splits, too wide, too long. She leans closer. Says in May's voice, "You're the reason," she screamed. May drops to her knees, sobs into her palms, but her palms burn. The glyphs, those twisting, clawed symbols, light up across her hands like veins full of fire. She screams black bile, pours from her nose, from her mouth. It hisses on the ground like acid. Rico rushes to her, grabs her. It's not real, May. It's the mirror. It's just a mirror. But the ridge doesn't reflect. It records. May looks up. Her eyes, one still human, the other black and swirling like a camera lens. It knows what I did. Ty stands behind them, still humming, still grinning. He lifts his shirt. His chest is covered in claw marks. Fresh, bleeding, but no one touched him. The cuts form letters, a phrase: I bit her, I made her. His voice isn't his own anymore. Layered, feminine, masculine, childlike, all at once. It's not the moon, he says. It's the memory, the guilt. That's how it spreads. Rico backs up, hands shaking. You're not Ty. Ty tilts his head. I was. Then I remembered what I did. And the ridge remembered too. He steps forward but doesn't walk. He glides like the tape is skipping frames. May stands or tries to. Her knees buckle, but she lifts the camera. If I film it, I stay me. She points it at herself. A reflection doesn't follow, it delays, then smiles before she does. It's recording us to replace us, she whispers. Every copy gets stronger. She breathes in, hands shaking, lowers the camera. I deserve it. Rico grabs her, shakes her. You don't. You froze. That's human, and that's what the ridge feeds on, she says. Not fear, regret. Behind them, Ty's body twitches. He convulses. His spine bends backward, bones. Cracked skin splits, not like a transformation, like a memory being peeled away. And what's underneath is older, hairless, eyes glassy, a mouth with too many seams, as if it was stitched closed 1,000 times and keeps ripping back open. He lunges. May stands tall. The glyphs glow brighter. Then she speaks. Run. She doesn't scream it. She says it like a command, like a final truth. Rico hesitates, then nods. He runs. The camera swings wildly. Branches slash past. Breath ragged. Heartbeat like a war drum behind him. Sounds. Not just howls, not just claws. Sounds of regret being torn out of flesh, of guilt chewing through bone, of someone becoming something because they finally admitted what they did. He looks back, just once, and he's May, half human, half something else, locked in combat with the tithing claw against claw, grief against guilt. She roars, not like a woman, not like a beast, like something older than both. Then, static, tape distortion, glitch, silence, and Rico alone. Camera cracked, battery red, blood on the lens, not his, not hers, maybe both. And in the trees, the whisper returns. Say your name, or we'll say it for you. There's no final girl in this story, no heroic last stand, no sunrise to outrun. There's only the one who remembers everything wrong, and the ridge. It remembers better than you do. Rico limps, bleeding, breathing shallow, camera held close like a relic. The trail is gone, or maybe it was never real. Ahead, the clearing, the one from the legend, stone circle, dead trees, silence like a held breath before the scream. And in the center, a mirror, massive, framed in antlers, twisted like horns, cracked but not broken. It reflects nothing until you step close. Then it shows too much. Rico steps forward. His reflection blinks a half-second late. Mouth moves before he speaks. Then, May, but not the one he left behind. Not the girl with fire in her eyes. This version is taller, fur-lined, eyes glowing like camera lights left too long in the dark. But it's still her. Beneath the claws, you can tell. She turns toward him. You still have the tape? He nods. Barely. The weight of it heavy in his hands. It's still watching through you, she says. It knows you're the last one who hasn't confessed. Behind her, Ty crawls forward, but he's not crawling. He's unfolding. His spine moves like rope. His joints crack backward. His skin ripples like something is swimming beneath it. His mouth opens. No sound comes out. But from the trees, Rico hears his own voice. I knew she was in danger. I just didn't want to see it. His knees give. He drops. The tape flutters in his hand like it wants to eject itself. I should have gone after her. You didn't, May says, and now the ridge knows who to keep. The mirror pulses. Blood. Moon overhead, air turns thick. Rico sees them all now. Faces in the trees. Not just May, not just Ty. Others. People the ridge recorded. People who wandered in with stories and never left with them. Their mouths move in unison. Play it, he presses. The button, the camera whirs, clicks, and instead of playback, he sees memories, his, May's, Ty's, June's, but twisted, looped, distorted through regret. He watches himself freeze as June walks away. He watches himself choose silence. He watches the moment he turned away and became part of the story instead of the rescue. We all lied, May says. That's why the ridge loves us. Then the tape screeches, splits, and from the mirror, the memory beast steps out. It doesn't roar, it doesn't run, it just watches, and everything it sees becomes part of it. It's tall, shaggy, but not wolf, not man. Its fur is made of tape, its claws, ink, its mouth. Unspools memory like film, melting in a projector. Rico backs away, the beast doesn't follow. It waits, because it doesn't hunt. It records. May steps forward. Half beast, half something else, but her eyes, still hers, barely. Give me the tape, she says. Before it replays you, he holds it out, hands shaking, fingers bloody. She takes it, turns to the mirror, raises it like a weapon. This is the last copy, she says, and I remember everything. Then she throws it. It hits the mirror, breaks the surface like water, ripples, burns, glows red. The glyphs on her arms ignite, her body convulses. The transformation completes. Fur spreads across her back, eyes flicker, voice deepens. Not all monsters kill, she says. Some of them hold back the others. Ty Thing lunges. She meets him midair, claw against claw, regret versus guilt, past versus past. The camera glitches, image shudders, sound distorts. You don't see the end of the fight, only flickers. Blood, screams, snarls, laughter, then blackout. Rico lies on the forest floor, alone, mirror shattered, camera cracked, the tape gone, the ridge silent. Then a voice, not his, not May's, someone else, a woman, calm, cold, static in her vowels. If you watch this far, it chose you too. Silence, no birds, no wind, no breath. Then a boot crunches dead leaves. Rico walks alone, camera slung over one shoulder, his eyes empty, not scared, not broken, just recorded. He found his way out, or maybe the ridge let him, but when he got home, he didn't call the cops, didn't bury the tapes, didn't run. He uploaded them, all of them, uncut, unedited, untouched. And within hours, they spread, burner sites, dark threads, Reddit chains that vanished before mods could flag them, then stranger places, private forums where you have to whisper your screen name just to get in, but people watched, and the footage changed. Some viewers saw May, still human, sobbing through static, begging not to be remembered. Some saw Ty's mouth twisting into theirs, like the video knew, their teeth. Some heard June whispering their name from behind their headphones. Others just saw a glyph, looping, burning, crawling slowly across the screen. Like a memory you didn't know you had. The cops said Elkhorn Ridge didn't exist. The coordinates loop into nothing. Maps glitch, roads vanish. Search teams return confused. Wrong. Trees, wrong weather, no birds. But every now and then, someone posts a new screenshot. The glyph etched in fogged car windows, drawn in condensation on school mirrors, carved into bark behind gas stations at night. Some people started dreaming in static, others stopped dreaming entirely. One viewer claimed the final frame of the footage blinked in Morse code. They translated it. "We were never wolves, we were memories that bite." Rico vanished 6 days after the upload. His YouTube channel updated one last time. No title, no tags, just black screen. And after 20 seconds, a whisper, his voice, but wrong. "Mark your screen." Then the glyph appeared, rotating slowly, pulsing red. You couldn't pause it, couldn't rewind, couldn't screenshot it, but everyone who watched said the same thing. Afterward, their screens glitched just for a second, then went back to normal, like nothing ever happened, but they couldn't stop thinking about it, about the ridge, about the howl, about the name they heard whispered that wasn't theirs, until it was. If you made it this far, then you've heard it too. Maybe not out loud, but inside, somewhere deeper, under your heartbeat, behind your next thought. The ridge doesn't need to chase you. You carried it home, and every time you hit play, it grows. So before the next full moon, mark your screen, because the next name it learns might be yours, and once the ridge remembers you, it never forgets. Now you've seen it, and it's seen you. Before the next full moon, mark your screen. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist. Linked below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.